fan of the perfume industry, pretty much the citrus industry, and some essential oils from Italy. And to begin, we're going to smell some of these things too, which is better than hearing just words. So, and you know, you're all familiar with lemon, lime, tangerine, grapefruit, some mandarin, yes? How many people are familiar with bergamot? Well, there's a few, see? It's the true Sicilians. Well, there's only really one place in the world that really this is grown and cultivated. That's in Calabria, just across the Straits of Messina, the toe of Italy. Very small region of the world. So, can we turn down the light so we can see one's first slide?
The lights that are there, which light would you like to see?
Well, so they can see the screen, the front floodlights. Yeah. And now give me your first slide. These are, just to run briefly, so you don't have to remember all this. These orange, grapefruit, tangerine, mandarin, lemon, lime, these are all, this section right here, all the same component. Very large percentage, a lot of similarity between the citrus. It's all the trace components that makes the difference. And bergamot, look, bergamot makes a big change. And that's what's very unusual. So we're going to look at some of the things from, and you can give me the next slide. That's my lovely assistant, my wife. So the first thing you're going to look at, where do you get these oils? How do they get the essenza from these fruits? Well, they not only come from the fruits. It comes from fruits, leaves, twigs, bark, roots. Everything we do in botanical, we extract out for flavor and fragrance materials. So you see, from one tree, we have the fruit, the blossoms, and the leaves and twigs. Now, under the fruit, from the fruit, we get a processed extract. We get peel for marmalade, from bitter orange. And then if we extract further, is the juice from bread. It comes in two layers. Oil layer and a water layer. The water is on the bottom, the oil is on the top. For the blossoms, the same thing. We do solvent extract, gives the orange flower. This is the essence from the flower with all its waxes. And the steam distilled version, which is they run the flowers with steam. And that separates also the two layers. Oil on top, water on the bottom, and called neroli oil, or orange blossom oil. And absolute is after they remove the waxes. This is the other type of essence that comes from the same flower. Also, during the steam distillation, there's two layers. An oil phase and a water phase, and that's orange flower water. You've heard of rose water too. This is orange flower water. And orange flower water, some of you know this is used in cooking too. Yes? And sfogliatelle, some people use the orange flower water. And then again, a further extraction of the water gives the orange flower absolute. From the leaves and twigs, there's two types of extractions, steam distilled and alcohol. This is called petitgrain, or small grains. How this name came originally, the tree from which the fruit and blossoms were growing, some of the immature fruits used to fall to the ground. So they picked up these small grains and they made a little extract of this called petitgrain. Now the industry's changed enough to where they take the leaves and the twigs and they steam distill leaves and twigs and get a material. It's really, if you think of it, it's orange leaf. It's true for orange leaf, lemon leaf, bergamot leaf, mandarin leaf. All the citrus leaves have some product that they call generically petitgrain or petitgrain. So, it's a lot from one tree. Gives so many products. Give me the next slide if you like. And these are some of the materials that come from all these different products. They're all in common, but they're all in different proportions. They have citrus notes, floral notes, fruity notes, spicy notes, and some green, earthy, leafy notes. Now, the first thing we're going to smell, because the business of talking about flavors and fragrances doesn't count until you can smell it. Now what we're going to do is my lovely assistant's going to hand some blotters per row down, and we'll hand down this row, and you pass the blotters along to smell, and pass them one per row on this side. That's all. You stay to the right.
Okay.
See, it's hard to get good help.
And believe me, the tastings too.
I'm grateful for that.
Can you share?
If you just slide it on down.
Now, if you'll notice, it has this whole bead. That's orange blossom. One more.
I think they have back here. We see they have one. Same one. So too. Would you like to smell that?
Smell again, same thing, yeah.
I think it's kind of, I don't think that's more of like an earthy kind of thing. I don't know if that's like one of the plastic, but it's kind of like clean stuff.
Go back to the flyer. See? Ooh, that's not. He's more right. It does smell like the orange rose. Don't inhale it too deeply. Smell it very lightly. And I'm all going to give you a smelling lesson. I'll hold the blotter, because I see we're having trouble here. See this? The blotter's designed not to do this, or this. It's designed to handle this way. Lightly, down through the nose, snip. Gently, gently. Take it away. Don't leave it there. Take a snip and take it away. You don't want to saturate yourself with odor. Now, this orange blossom is from the flowers. This is a 10% solution. When you smell it, this is very strong. When you smell it in the flower, it's less than 0.1%. So this is 100 times more concentrated than you would ever experience in nature. It's also $4,000 per pound, or $9,000 per kilo for the metric feet. So it's quite expensive, and that's why it's used very little.
Give it to your girl or your mom.
Now, that's the blossom. Now what we're going to smell next is going to be marked P, the pentagram, and that's the leaf of the same tree. And you see how different. It's related but different. No, that takes many years to test it.
Which one is this again?
The new one, that's the pedigree. It's got a P on it. Pedigree. I took the trophy and walked away from the
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's the most of the leaves into the last one was the blossom.
It is strong. You're right.
That's much stronger.
But it's very interesting. Well, this may seem strong. The other is going to be an performance, very rich, long-lasting. leaves, and it doesn't last quite as long, it's not quite as rich. It's also very inexpensive. Those are very expensive. There's plenty of leaves, very few blossoms. That's why. So you can see. For the next thing we're going to look at, now we look at the flower, the leaves, now we look at the fruit, mandarin.
I mean, I was there this summer.
Where were you?
I stayed with a host family in Imatici.
This is
Area of Italy.
Italian red mandarin.
On the east, north of Rome.
You can see it's nice and beautiful color.
Yeah, I was seeing it. A little blocked and so much. I mean, I think it was. She's involved in it.
Very good.
No. Which one is this?
Mandarin.
Oh, the Mandarin.
And these are so concentrated.
I wasn't thought, yes, that's
That's not a lot of fun. Somebody talking. So how do we get this oil out from the fruit? I told you how we got it out from the blossoms, and a little bit how we get it from the leaves and twigs. But from the fruit is a little special process. You know when you all peeled an orange or a tangerine, you know what comes on your hand, the oil. This oil is from the skin, not from inside. What comes from inside is the juice. It's a different components from the juice than the peel. So how do they do this? While they're doing this project, they want the juice too. So they cut it in half, and they squeeze the juice out, and then they abrade the skin before to rough it up and scratch it out. And then it's pressed. There's three methods called pulizia dischi, which is a disc cleaning. It grades along the disc. And the other one is torchiati, or pressed. And then finally it's a ricicli, recycled. They recycle, so there's three sections. They rub it with a disc, they press the oil out from the skin, and then they recycle the water to get the juice separate from the oil. And this oil that you smell, this comes from the top layer of the water. And that's what's in the peel of the oil. What you taste when you drink juice is a very dilute solution of some of the components that are in the peel, along with sugars, acids, and mostly water. And how many? Hundreds of components, of flavor components in the water. More than 200. So, and that's what we know. The trouble is, we know some things, but we never know enough. We learn something, we say, oh, we got 30 components, we should really be able to understand this. Then the years go by and we have 100 components. And more years go by and we have 200 components. I'm sure another 10 years goes by, we're going to have 400 components. So the lower we look, the more we find. So this is what the flavor and fragrance industry is about. Finding things, finding out what their character is, the taste characteristics, how to use them, how to make them, how to combine them to create something new. The best oil that we have in perfumery is bergamot. It's also the least quantity. Very little produced, but it's always all used. And there's one other place that it's grown and produced commercial quantity. That's in Ivory Coast, off of the coast of Africa. And that was because they took some of the plantings and the cuttings from Calabria and brought it there, much to the disappointment of the Italian government. And and grow it, but they were never able to produce the same quality until very recently. Now it's fairly good. Not as good as the original Italian Calabria material, but now, where did this come from? Nobody knows. They say they know. It was originally thought that this was brought by Christopher Columbus, who's into everything, from the town of Burgos, near Barcelona, Spain. But nobody's really sure, because some people insist, as only the Italians could, that this is a special hybrid unique only to Calabria. so we always have, whenever I say it's from Burgos, Barcelona, I always throw that in, make sure everybody knows. Now we're going to smell that. Now, and we'll talk about how unusual this is and why it's unusual. Essenza, bergamot. And there's a few things made from this, but not much. They tell me that the juice is not used for anything. When I go there and visit, I did find what the juice was. They take, because there's so little produced, they take it and they add some of it to grapefruit to make it much brighter and more palatable. Because some people don't like grapefruit, it's a little bitter for them. This makes it much more citrusy and bright.
Bergamot.
It's a fruit. You know?
Probably.
I don't have as a slide, but I did bring a picture of it.
I think so. Makes you pucker up.
This is, you can see it, this is it looks like about the size of an orange, green and yellow. And they never quite turn all yellow. They still make this
But recently, I heard a lecture on aromatherapy, you know, the oils, essential oils, and they say
no one really eats it. For most people, first, there's two problems. Everything they use is used for the perfume industry, so they can't sell the fruit, because then they would have nothing for the perfume industry, which now, let me, to give you an example, when we buy lemon oil, it's about $12 a pound. When you buy orange oil, it's about $8 a pound. When you buy tangerine, it's about $15 a pound. Mandarin is about $25 a pound. Bergamot is $90 per pound.
wow.
So, you can see, they don't want people eating this. You have a question?
One time when we were in Thailand, we were in a cooking class where we picked bergamot leaves and used them in cooking. Don't they harvest bergamot in Thailand for perfume industry?
Not that I know. Not that I know. There's only two sources, I tell you, Ivory Coast, and in Thailand, I don't believe, you might have had something related, but not the real stuff. And that's citrus bergamia, which is related to other citrus fruits. But bergamot, and they also use bergamot in Earl Grey tea. That's oil. But that's oil produced from Italy. There's also there's a liqueur that's made called bergamino. And they also make a marmalade from the leftover peel. They make a bergamot marmalade with a very limited production. You never see any in the United States. You can buy some. Somebody bought some.
There's a place in Rome that sells it.
Sell in Rome. Rome seems like New York City, and then they get everything. So, and for most people, it's a little too perfumey. Now, when you got this bergamot, one of the things about bergamot, let's go to that next slide. If we look at the bergamot, it has more. If you look at some of the citrus components here, I lost my pointer. That's okay. We don't need it. The citrus part is due to this column, but in bergamot, it has a combination of the left column, the citrus column, and the floral column. So it's a hybrid. It smells. If you smell this bergamot, you see it has a little bit of floralcy. Much more than citrus. So that has prevented people from making too much demand on it, because it's too perfuming. They describe it as too perfuming. I happen to love it. When I'm there, I take the bergamot, squeeze it right into the water and drink it. It's a delightful, refreshing drink. You can go to the next slide. Now, these in perfume industry, these are the top sellers for 1999. See all these, every one of these fragrances, CK1, Eternity Men, now everything I'm telling you now, this is trade secret information. You'll never hear this from anybody else because they don't know, and typically they don't tell or publish any of this information. So, but every one of these fragrances, CK1, Eternity Men, Polo Sport, Tommy, Cool Water, Hugo, all of the Woody Blends, Polo, Obsession, Floral Blends, Pleasures, Eternity, all of these have some bergamot to a greater or lesser degree. So this is, you see the CK1, bergamot lemon. They have all used lemon mandarin, all citrus, Italian citrus oils. And typically, it's recognized in the industry that the Italians make the best quality oils of anyone. And this is they demand the highest price. They're cherished for fine perfumes and colognes. This was, and they've been used since 1700s and documented since 1700s. Now you can be sure, like everything else in life, what's written is only written after its many hundreds or thousands of years of use. People didn't have the presence or the desire to write down everything they did. So anything that's laced with a date, you can assume hundreds or thousands of years before it was used. Perfume started as early written records as the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans. And the Romans did the best in organizing everything and dispensing it through the world. One more slide, I believe. And these are some of the women's fragrances. Chanel 5, Arpège, Nuit de Bois. One that's not on here, that's conspicuously absent, is, and look how, since 1921 to 1997, it's a continuing theme. It's little changes are made all the time, but they always incorporate the use of bergamot, lemon, lime, mandarin. So it's a fabulous components that add lift and brightness to almost every flavor or fragrance. And now is going to save time for, at this point, ask any questions you may have. Go ahead.
Why is it that the Chanel number 5, which it says in France, doesn't smell anything like the Chanel number 5 here?
Oh, that's a very good question. Most people don't know that. That's correct.
Because I always have mine sent from France.
Well, there's two reasons for it. You know, as Chanel became the big corporate conglomerate, they have two different production centers. They use different quality materials. Even though the formulation is the same, they have, here's what happens in reality. You would say, well, why don't they use the same quality? Because it's not available in enough quantity. That's why. And we have different laws and regulations in the United States than we have in Europe. And Europe is allowed to use things that we don't use here. We are overly cautious from a toxicological and safety standpoint here in the United States. Even though we had thousands, in this country we had hundreds of years of safe use, here. Once they find something, there's a little problem. For example, in bergamot, in 1980s or 70s, 80s, thereabouts, they found that bergamot can cause a photosensitization. What that means is that when sunlight hits the chemical on your skin, it can cause irritation. It causes irritation in about 1% of people. So it has to be less, in the United States, the regulations has to be less than 1%. So because, you know, we're so litigious, you know, we sue everybody for everything, and the juries award them a lot of money, and you spill hot coffee and you get $3 million. So this is, so we become so litigious that we're err on the side of safety. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that some of the materials are produced in such small quantity that they have a replacement for this material used in the United States.
So the alcohol?
No, not the aldehydes. See, now you seem like you know something about fragrance. Well, aldehydes are a particular class of chemical. The reason that's, they say this is aldehydic floral, and they say this is aldehydes. People say this without knowing what they're talking about or knowing anything about it whatsoever. Aldehydes occur naturally in every single product, every single botanical that's ever extracted. Aldehydes occur naturally. What happened with Chanel No. 5 is during Chanel No. 5 in 1921, synthetic chemistry was just able to synthesize aldehydes for the first time. So since they were available synthetically for the first time, they could add more than nature could add. So instead of existing at 0.1%, they put them at 0.3%. So it's 3 times more than was in nature, and it made the fragrance much stronger and brighter. So this is, they call aldehydic floral without really understanding. It's just it's become, in my view, a silly marketing term. See, so to understand it from a chemical standpoint, though, how it relates to nature is a much more interesting story. But sales girls and marketers don't want to tell anybody this because they don't know it themselves. Yes?
Why is it that, what happens chemically when the same fragrance will smell differently on different women?
Well, people always say that.
You don't think that's true?
Well, it's not completely true. It's true to a very minor extent. And the reason it's true, here's why that you perceive it this way. First of all, when you put something on yourself, your perception of what is on you is different from what someone else's perception. There's also a function of time, your body temperature, how long it's been on your skin. The fragrances are dynamic, changing. So from moment to moment, they are different. Forget about from person to person. I'll give you the reverse. Why is it that I can recognize the fragrance on anybody I smell it on? That's because I recognize the identity. You're looking at a very narrow snapshot of time. So that's another little bit of a myth. There are some people whose body chemistry causes, we have odor on our own, as well. So our skin emanates a particular odor, or how many thousands of chemicals. So though your own particular body odor is mixing with this, so it would smell different to that extent. But the fragrance itself is not really smelling different. What you're smelling is the difference in time, concentration, your body temperature, and it's like a passing train where each car looks a little different as it goes on. And when you're looking, you're seeing a different color. But the train is still the same.
There are times that when a woman is wearing a particular fragrance and it turns me off. I don't like it.
I can't talk about.
It's like something happens to it.
Well, again, that may be her own body chemistry. That is not a great combination with that fragrance. So that's to that extent, yes.
Are these the only ingredients in
No.
these?
No.
They're just the essences.
There are some of the ingredients that are, if you notice, I only looked at the citruses.
Oh, yes.
So, since fragrances have thousands of ingredients, I just focused on what citruses are used. And I also didn't tell you how much is used. Yes?
What is the difference between the oils used in aromatherapy, they call essential oils, and the oils used in perfume?
There's no difference. The soy oils that are used in it, the question is, what's the difference in the oils used in aromatherapy or the oils used in perfumes? And the answer is there is no difference. The question might have been phrased this way: is there a difference between aromatherapy oils and perfumes? And the answer is yes. In general, aromatherapy oils only contain botanical extract. It's not always true, but they say, that's what they claim. And in perfume, it's synthetic materials, albeit nature identical, are used with essential oils. It's a combination of both. So that might clear up your question. Yes?
With some of these oils, could you cook with them, or do you need like food grade versions of them?
Well, most, everything you see here is food grade. Everything you smell today is food grade. You could cook with them. And they are in fact used in baking and confection and other kinds of cooking applications. But there are some natural oils that are completely natural that are not used to cook because they're not allowed by the Food and Drug Administration. For example, absinthe. Absinthe is no longer used, but that was used at one time. Oil of sassafras for root beer was eliminated. Although erroneously eliminated, it's been eliminated. It is erroneously eliminated, but it was eliminated nonetheless because they thought that saffron, the major component of root beer, was a carcinogen. Now, it turned out to be a carcinogen, but only for mice, not for people. So, because it was only 30 years, or actually 60 years later, that they found out that saffron in a mouse has a different metabolic pathway than it does in humans. But once it's eliminated, you can't get something back on. It takes more than an act of Congress. So, yes.
More related to the olfactory system. Why is it that after a while you smell something it seems like it doesn't smell anymore?
That's a good question. Everybody kind of hear the question? Yeah. Well, this is what's known as an olfactory loop. It's like listening to a sound for long enough. Your brain ignores the signal. So you can smell. First, if you smell long enough, your brain acclimates. So that means that it's a way of survival. You're safe in that environment. If there's an increase in concentration, you will smell the increase, but you won't smell a decrease in concentration until you had been in that decreased concentration for more than 10 minutes.
Okay, so there's nothing you can do but just...
No, that's one of the...
Stop smelling for 10 minutes?
Correct. That's why I tell you, sniff it lightly. Don't inhale it so profusely. It's the sniff lightly and breathe. Yes?
Can you comment on the thriving industry of knockoff?
Sure. That's partly responsible for that business. You know, so.
Can you repeat the question?
And I'll give you the example.
What was your question?
The question is, can I comment on the thriving business of knockoffs? Now, what that means is knockoff means if opium puts out a fragrance, somebody else puts out another fragrance and makes. If you like opium, you'll love this. You'll love poppy, for example. That's a true story. So, obviously, the company that put out opium is not going to go knock themselves off. It's another company who recognizes that there's a market exists for this type of fragrance. It's well received. So they put out a lower cost version of this. In almost every case, people who come to me and said, you know, I like opium, can you make a fragrance like that? And I say, sure. And I make it, I do a faithful replication, and I extract it and analyze it and put together a very good rendition of it. And I tell them the price is $60 a pound. They say, no, we don't want that. We want a version for $15 a pound. You see? So this is, while it's possible that you can get knockoffs that are of the same quality, it's extremely rare because generally the people who are doing it want to make a very low cost version. So they get a shadow of it. Yes?
I love drinking green tea, and I'm wondering, is it just a coincidence that it smells so much like this, the bergamot?
It doesn't smell like it to me.
Oh, okay.
So now I'm wondering, do you drink Earl Grey tea?
No, I use this Salada.
Okay, do you ever drink Earl Grey tea?
No.
No, okay. Now, see, and I'm very careful to tell people they're wrong in this, because I'll tell you why. In green tea, there are some common components, so sometimes you'll latch onto a characteristic that exists in natural bergamot that you're associating with green tea. It's not what I call an accurate characterization. I'll give you the example. When you look at a forest, you could spot a yellow leaf, but you're missing the green of the forest. But you're right, there is a yellow leaf there, and that's similar to what you're doing with bergamot. You're spotting the yellow leaf in the green forest. And so it's not wrong, it's just not 100% correct. From a professional standpoint.
Okay.
From an artistic standpoint, you can do whatever you want. Any other questions?
Do people patent perfumes?
No. Why do you, can anybody know anything about the patent process? And
They don't know what's in it.
correct. If you patent a perfume, you have to disclose it. If you disclose it, people could change one ingredient and have something new. So it's much more powerful to protect as a trade secret and keep those 200 components trade secret without giving away the whole formulation. And it's very few people. And I'm one of probably less than 30 people in the United States who has that ability, both analytically and olfactorily. So it's a combination of those two things you need, not just one or the other. Yes? Pardon me? I work for my own company. It's called Custom Essence in Somerset, New Jersey. Now,
What is the most common ingredient in the most popular perfumes?
there is no, that's not, there is no one common ingredient in perfume. There is a collection of common ingredients. And those collection of common ingredients include all the citrus products, all of them. Lemon, lime, tangerine, mandarin, grapefruit, bergamot, and all the flower oils, rose, jasmine, orange flower, all the precious wood extracts, cedarwood, sandalwood, vetiver roots. These are a collection of ingredients that are used over and over. And so there's no one common ingredient. It's a collection of about 200 really ingredients that form 90% of all perfumes. But in our repertoire, we have over 6,000 materials that we use that create all the different combinations and permutations. There's only 12 notes in the musical scale. How many songs do you make out of those? So, and we have 5,000 or 6,000 ingredients that we use for perfumes and flavors. So all those combinations. Yes?
These are oils, like the bergamot and all that, they're oils, and it seems like the perfume is not like oily, you know what I mean? So how do you combine like the alcohol or water or whatever with the oils?
It's very simply a dilution of the concentrated oil in alcohol. Alcohol is a medium by which the perfume is distributed and dispersed. So otherwise they'd be very viscous. In this country, you couldn't sell just concentrated oils without a warning that it's irritating to the skin and eyes.
You have your own perfume that you've developed?
No, and the reason I don't have my own perfume that I developed is that as a commercial artist working for companies, if I did, I'd be a direct competitor of my customers. Yes?
Was there another scent, an aerial? What was that other oil that you said came from like bergamot that you used it? Fragrances? N-E?
Neroli.
Neroli, yeah.
Neroli.
You have any of that?
No, it's the same as the orange blossom oil that I gave you. Neroli and orange blossom oil are very similar. They're two different qualities. Yes?
Where does musk come into the picture?
Somebody always asks this question about musk.
What is it that you
Excuse me, where does musk come from, or where does musk come from in fragrance? Musk was a generic term that was used to characterize the odor left by animals on trees or mating when they, as part of their scent marking, when they mark a territory or mark, use it in spray or either or for mating. This term musk comes from that. That it was a generic term ascribed to something that was extremely long-lasting and created a foundation for perfumes. So many materials are said to have a musk-like character. So these perfumes were thought to be, these materials were thought to be attractants to some degree, sexually. So this is something that has never been proven, but people are still working on this, looking for that pheromone, for that musk attractant. But it's, yes, Lily?
Felix, I think I just got an answer to my question a few back. When I drink sherry, I like to drink it straight up. And I take a little twist of lemon and slightly singe it over a candle and twist it just a little and drop it into the sherry. And I never understood why it was so beautifully dispersed until you said alcohol has done that.
Yeah, the alcohol. First of all, when you mix anything with any kind of drink, the components that are soluble are going to be dispersed out through the liquid medium. And sherry, which can have 10 to 20% alcohol, is going to distribute that flavor component from that citrus rind, which is in direct contrast to the type of components that are in the sherry already, which are all aged kind of floral and winey and fruity. Citrus is very bright and lively, so that's going to be picked up. You've changed the balance and blend. These guys worked so hard 20 years to get where the sherry and created a lemon. So that's a lemon twist. Well, this is what people do. That's what everybody's so creative, you know.
The combination is dynamite.
Yes. Yes.
Speaking of this, does any perfume manufacturer put the pheromones or pheromones into
People say they do. There have been a few. Jovan has done this initially, and that has come from the sweat of boar. And they have extracted this androstenone, which has been somewhat identified as a sexual attractant. It never works for pigs, but for men. But they put it in nonetheless. So, and you can pay for it. They're very carefully. Well, I think we should conclude, and I have, as a little surprise for you, I brought a little sample for everybody of a men's cologne and women's perfume, and they're not knockoffs, but they're in the family of Chanel 19 and Paco Rabanne. They're not labeled because we don't make retail sales, but they are very good quality perfumes. I'm sure you like them.